Ok? Ok, já estamos ao vivo. Em alguns 2, 3 minutos a gente começa. Quer apresentá-lo, Maria José?
Faltando 1 minuto, vamos. É? Ok. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here, both here and online. It's my pleasure to introduce Professor Bernd Böttiger. He's the full professor of the University of Anesthesiology at the University of Cologne in Germany. And he's also the worldwide leader of the Kids Save Lives group. I first met Professor Böttiger in 2016 during the European Congress of Anesthesiology in London, when I attended his lecture about the Kids Save Lives project. At that time, we already have a project here in the University of São Paulo related to learning to teach children in basic life support. The name of that project was Learning to Save Life. And after met Professor Böttiger, we begin a partnership, and we create the Kids Save Lives Brazil here, which was improved with the participation of Professor Naomi Nakagawa. Some of you know Professor Naomi from the Department of Physiotherapy. And after that, the group improved a lot. We, from 2018 up to now, we trained over than 15,000 children and adolescents in BLS, in the Kids Save Lives Brazil group. We have the participation of many universities from Brazil. One of them is the University from Rio Grande. Professor Böttiger is in Brazil this time to receive the honorary title of Professor Honorary of the University of Rio Grande. And today, this morning, he also received the Medal of Centenary here in the Faculdade de Medicina da USP. In this partnership, beside this training, we also publish 4 papers together. We publish a book related to the Kids Save Lives. Professor Naomi teaches 2 PhD students related to Kids Save Lives. And last November, the Kids Save Lives group received an important award in the American Heart Association. So we have the honor to enter to Chicago to receive this honor together with Professor Böttiger. Thank you, Professor. So this partnership is being improved each year. So it's a great honor to receive Professor Böttiger today for this class about CPR in aircrafts. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you very much, Professor Maria Carmona, for this very nice and heartful introduction. I appreciate our collaboration and your support over the last years very much, and I feel very much honored to be here with all of you today. And I have heard you are all anesthesia residents, is that correct? Yes. Okay, good. So you already know how to do CPR. And who is online? Or we have online also anesthesia residents? Anesthesiologists. So all my best wishes to our online participants. I would like to make it a little bit interactive, if you agree. Must not be. And Maria asked me what theme I should present here, and I suggested several themes. And then you said CPR in aircraft is probably the most important or the most interesting thing. And I also have at the end of my presentation a video that you probably have not seen yet, just to attract your attention and to urge you to stay until the end of my presentation. So we start with this. Do you know what this is? Yes, what is it?
It's the match at the moment when a very famous player, he went down on a heart attack or a, to be fair, well, I don't know the English word for that, but
yes, you're right.
Yeah, cardiac arrest.
Yes,
exactly.
Who has seen this in television? Okay, some. Okay, so this was European Championships, Football Championship, Copenhagen. This is the guy, Christian Eriksen, a famous football player, was running. Suddenly he collapsed because his heart had ventricular fibrillation. If the heart has ventricular fibrillation, how long does it take until the brain is not functioning anymore and someone gets collapsing? What do you think? How long? Until it's not functioning anymore? 5 to 10 seconds. That's the reason why he was collapsing during running. And how long does it take until the brain starts to die? That's what you mean. 3 to 5 minutes. When is the ambulance arriving if you are calling the ambulance? Should we try? 10 minutes, maybe later. So the ambulance is always coming too late. You can only survive if someone is doing something, the heart is not beating anymore, the brain only weighing 1 to 2 kilograms, but is consuming 20% of the oxygen of the body. There is no oxygen anymore after 2 minutes, so it dies. In the rest of the body, there is enough oxygen, so you only need to pump the blood to the brain with the oxygen, and the brain cannot die, and so you can bridge the time until the emergency medical service arrives. That has been done with him, so there were some doctors around, they immediately start CPR. And this is in the afternoon, after his cardiac arrest in the hospital, he was again already on Instagram. And this could happen with all cardiac arrest patients. And cardiac arrest is the 3rd leading cause of death in our civilized world. So in Europe, we have this occurred 1,000 times a day. Every day, 1,000. In Brazil, 500 times a day. But this is our topic for today. And you have a question, Maria? Okay. And I have brought with me these 3 C's. Do you know what these 3 C's mean? At the end of my presentation, you will know, and this is very important, don't forget, it's the most important thing also for CPR in airplanes or aircrafts. I have some conflicts, this is very fast. I have some conflicts of interest because I'm engaged in several national and international organizations. And of what will we die? You can see cancer is the leading cause of death, but out of hospital cardiac arrest, as I said, is the 3rd leading cause of death. So almost as much people are dying due to out of hospital cardiac arrest as of cancer. How many billions of dollars we spend in drugs for cancer and in prevention for cancer, we need to start to spend in cardiac arrest because we have 1,000 every day. This counts to 350,000 unsuccessful CPRs every year in the European Union. That means in Brazil it's half. That means in the European Union it is 2 jumbo jets, 1,000 people dying every day without any survivor. In Brazil, it's one jumbo jet crashing down every day, all over the year. That is the amount of the healthcare problem we have, so we need to act because we can do a lot of positive things. This remote control is not so much controlling. So road traffic accidents, far less, 20 times less road traffic accidents. So cardiac arrest is really an important issue. In Europe, we have lay resuscitation rates between 13 and more than 80%. So a patient can only survive if lay people start to resuscitate or if the ambulance is very nearby. Otherwise, you cannot survive. So a wide range, 13 to 83%, that lay people start, as with Christian Eriksen, they start with CPR and people have a chance to survive. 0 to 18% is the survival rate. In mean, it is around 10%. And in my country, survival rate is 11%. So 1 out of 10 is surviving only today. And we all together can increase this. In Germany, we have a lay resuscitation rate of 50% after 20 years of hard work and campaigns and political activities. So this has also been said. Sorry, it's, oops, up. Sometimes it works, sometimes not. In the world, it's a real massive problem, more than 10,000 deaths per day. So what is most important? I need to be a little bit more fast, but maybe I go there, maybe it's too far away from the, all good? So what is most important? Most important is there's no oxygen anymore in the brain. Just pump blood to the brain, that's enough. You don't need to ventilate in the first minutes. Lay people don't need to ventilate, it's much too complicated. As anesthesiologists, we know how complicated it is to ventilate with a mask. So this graph is probably the most important. You have the collapse. The professionals arrive maybe after 8 or 10 minutes. The problem is the brain starts to die after 3 to 5 minutes. And with there's a time window for lay resuscitation. We have 3 times more survivors with lay resuscitation. And that is the reason why we have changed the chain of survival. You can see in the last years, the chain of survival consisted of 4 rings, and they had all the same size. And this new chain of survival, published by Charles Deacon some years ago, is based on real data and on the real effect of these interventions. And you can see early recognition and call for help and early CPR. This is much, 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 much more important with regard to survival than an AED or post-resuscitation care. So in the hospital and in the ambulance, we are coming too late. We don't have any drug to bring the brain function back. The most important thing is early start of CPR, and that's the reason why we need the lay people. And the lay people need to know if you wait for the ambulance, the brain will already be dead. Many lay people don't know it. In my country, we have a very good emergency medical service system, and lay people say, I have called the doctor, they will arrive, they will solve the problem. And they don't know that this is dead, means dead being dead for the patient. We could have many more Christian Eriksens in our world. And there is a national initiative some years ago in Denmark, over 10 years, with support of Her Royal Highness, a national initiative to improve cardiac arrest management. And you can see here they started with a bystander CPR rate of 20%. In the meantime, they are over 70% in this period until 50%. And they introduced mandatory education in resuscitation in elementary schools by law. This helps to increase bystander CPR rate, and the overall survival rate was tripled in this time period. In a deadly entity, in 10 years, tripling of survival. Do you know anything, regardless the costs, in a deadly entity that has increased survival by 3 times in the last 50 years? That is better than anything else, and it does not cost anything, only political activities. We are speaking about several hundreds of thousands of additional lives per year in the world. And the only thing to do is check, or the only thing we recommend to the lay people is check for signs of lives, call the EMS. What is the number in Brazil? 192, okay. And compress and bring the oxygen and the blood again. So check, is someone only sleeping? Call 192 and compress. That's all. That's the message for the lay people. Global blueprint to increase survival. And this does not only work in Denmark. Denmark is a very rich and developed country. But look, this is China, and this was published in JAMA last year. Survival after out-of-hospital cardiac arrest before and after legislation for bystander CPR. We need the politicians to support us. We need legislation to increase lay resuscitation rate. This works. So they measured the outcome before CPR training, mandatory CPR training, and after. And you see here the pre-period and the post-legislation period. Bystander CPR 4% before and 20% after. So they increased bystander CPR rate. It's in most of the cases they did only compression without ventilation, which is nice, and an automatic external defibrillator was not used very often. It's also not useful in my eyes for lay people. Lay people should wait for the EMS with a defibrillator and not run away and use a defibrillator in my eyes. So we are not training school children or lay people in CPR, at least not during the first hours. And look at the survival rate pre-legislation period in China, which is it a developed country or not? But it is at least not a very rich country, maybe. Post-legislation period, 5 times more survivors, only by legislation. So if politicians do not do a legislation, that is killing patients. This is the CPR rate, and this is the survival rate before and after legislation. Better than anything else, better than any drug, any other thing, any other intervention. Politician support is needed. And compression, death, and survival is also important. So most lay people do not compress deep enough because they are afraid of fractured ribs. And I'm always telling them, if ribs are fractured, that's a good sign, and I know that there was a very good CPR, and maybe the patient can survive in good conditions, because the deeper you compress, the better is the survival. And that is also a very important message to lay people. One message is, don't wait for the ambulance, and next message is, press as hard as you can. I never have seen someone who was pressing too hard. So please compress hard, and the message is check, call, compress, and this is the 3 C's that I brought with me. Please don't forget this anymore. Not at any time in your life, don't forget. And tell it to your children, parents, grandparents, check, call, compress. Fast and hard, and now we are coming to my topic. And here I have to say that some of the following slides were done by Professor Jochen Hinkelbein. He was my vice chair for many years in my department. Then he took over his own department, and he was an enthusiastic pilot. Received a pilot license with his 18th year. He was doing flights, with parable flights with, was heißt Schwerelosigkeit, with where you have no gravitation, so you can fly in the air. And unfortunately, about half a year ago, he had a private aircraft. This aircraft crashed. He was on this aircraft together with his daughter, 6 years old. 6 years old daughter survived, and he did not survive. So it's a very sad story, and I'm very thankful to him that I still have some slides from him. He was a very enthusiastic pilot, and the agenda is incidents, causes, equipment, recommendations, and guidelines. Very fast, I will. Lufthansa first class. Who has ever the opportunity had to fly first class? I had it. When I was a young resident, I was flying from Frankfurt through London to Washington for the American Society of Anesthesiology Congress with British Airways because it was the cheapest, and I had economy class. And then on the way back, I had 2 boarding passes, one from New York to London, and the next from London to Frankfurt. And I had a very intensive look, and I probably mixed them up, so I've unfortunately used my boarding pass for the flight from London to Frankfurt, for the flight from Washington to London. And I was going into the plane and was turning right because I'm always traveling economy class, and then the stewardess took me and said, "You need to go there." And I didn't resist, so I ended up in first class. And very unfortunately, the flight from Washington to London is only 6 hours. This was the first time, and I was the only passenger. I had 5 stewardesses and champagne and everything. So this is Lufthansa first class. There you have, but you never know what is in, and they don't have very much oxygen. They have 2 small, these kind of bottles of oxygen, that's all. I was surprised. And if you are flying like this, it's probably a different experience, narrow cabin, psychological factors, alcohol, stress, trauma. How many people are flying? It is more than 4 billion passengers per year already in 2013. Maybe it's now 5 or 6 billion, I don't know. There was a dip during Corona, we all know. Next question, who has experienced the medical emergency or a CPR on board of an airplane? Please raise your hands. What happened? Oh yeah, okay, wow. And it was successful? It is exciting if you're alone and no one is in, and then the next hospital is a little bit far away. Yes. Congratulations. You also raised your hand? Yes. Nevertheless, can be interesting. And hopefully it was not the pilot. You never know. Yes, okay. Someone else? I experienced 3 events, unfortunately not a CPR, and I will, if we have time at the end, I will tell you a little bit more of one very impressive event I experienced. So, medical emergencies in the European Union, 2,000 per year, UK 3,000, Germany 2,000, but we don't have different registries, so we only have a few data. We don't know the real numbers, so is the message. How many international flights are needed to experience an in-flight medical emergency? That is the abbreviation that I'm using on board. What do you think? How many international flights do you need? How many international flights did you have? Until then? You don't know, and you? So 24 is the mean international flights you need for one, not CPR, for one in-flight medical emergency. Okay? This is in-flight medical emergencies. Emergencies in the sky. This is Jochen Hinkelbein, who sadly is not alive anymore. During commercial air transport, this was one of his scientific areas. And you can see here cardiac emergencies, 50%. Gastrointestinal disorders, 90%. Then we have psychological, as you said. It's very narrow. You can get nervous. Respiratory, no urinary, so this was very seldom, obviously. So cardiac is the leading cause, and infectious disorders. Cardiac arrest, only 0.3% of all in-flight medical emergencies, fortunately. So cardiac arrest is very seldom. But if it occurs, it's a real problem. Categories of problems: exacerbating of pre-existing problems, 65%. You can see respiratory, cardiovascular, for forgotten medication. If you are driving through or flying through different time zones, you may forget your medication. That can be a problem. 65% exacerbation of pre-existing disorders. New medical conditions, 35%. Syncope, abdominal pain problems, headache. Who has ever experienced the stewardess or the steward asking, is there a doctor on board? Oh, you also. What happened?
It's a case of disorder, gastrointestinal disorder, hypotension. But in my experience in the aircraft, they don't have practically nothing to do. In the aircraft, they don't have no one equipment.
Yes, I will show you. I will show you. Very important thing. What is valuable at the aircraft? So is a doctor on board? That can also be exciting for every one of us. A doctor on board. Between 80 and 90% in Europe and in Germany, and less in UK. I don't know. Maybe doctors are afraid to fly in UK. I don't. International flights, in most of the cases, there is a doctor on board, but not in continental flights. And we don't have any data about other medical personnel. So now we come to the equipment. What is on board of an airplane? I mean, if you ask the captain, and if you are a doctor and you're on board, and you think it is necessary, you can tell the captain that he should take the next airport. That is your right and your duty. But it will cost several hundreds of thousands of dollars or euros if you have an unplanned landing. So they are interested in not have an unplanned landing. And this is the first aid kit. This is in Germany, in German, sorry. In Europe, so we have Augenspül for the eyes, something for the eyes, disinfection, infusion, and some other information material. This is mandatory for Europe, European Aviation something agency, first aid kit. I'm sorry, I don't know how this is in Brazil or in South America. Maybe you should ask. And we have a doctor's kit on board. We have supraepinephrine on board. We have lidocaine on board, so at least something we can use during cardiopulmonary resuscitation. And we have also a back mask valve ventilation for children and adults, and also mask for babies and adults. We have a laryngoscope, and we have tubes on board in the doctor's kit in Europe. I don't know how it is in your country, and also a Gödel tube and nasopharyngeal tube. And this is mandatory in Europe if there are more than 30 persons on board, and it is mandatory in the same situation in America. I think this is the Federal Aviation Agency or something like this. But doctors' kits, aircraft medical kits can look very different in different aircrafts. Different equipment. What is on board of German Airlines? Again, a publication with the lead from Jochen Hinkelbein. 73 German aircraft selected. We identified 15 to be appropriate and 13 airlines for analysis. And as you can see here, CPR equipment. aircraft with short distance flights, aircraft with long distance operations, 42% versus 100% in Germany. That 100% is good, but 42 is probably not enough. Anesthesia equipment, 14% versus 80%. What else is probably important here? IV access, 40% versus 80%. So this can be improved, and there's, very interestingly, no international regulation on that. That is a pity, I would say. These are the German airlines that we have asked. And the results are adequate material in German airlines for CPR, 30%. EKG and AED, 30%. 30% did not even had adrenaline on board in Germany. I mean, I always thought we are a developed country. Atropine, 69%, much more than adrenaline. Amiodarone and lidocaine, 23 and 46%. So only 1/3 of German airlines are adequately equipped for cardiopulmonary resuscitation. This is a scandal. Onboard emergency medical equipment for European airlines. We are going out of Germany again, Jochen Hinkelbein and others. We have identified more than 300. 52 airlines were contacted for analysis. Only half, less than half, answered, and 22 were analyzed. And as you can see here, IV access 100%, EKG AED 65%, anesthesia equipment 68%. What else is important here? Cardiopulmonary resuscitation equipment 100%. European airlines, not German airlines. Drugs for or against cardiopulmonary resuscitation in all. Anesthesia only in a very few. Most didn't had any drugs for anesthesia on board. So I skip this. These are the airlines that have answered for Europe. Also in Europe, we have very inhomogeneous equipment, and regulations are needed not only for Germany and Europe, but for the whole world, I think. And we have been on the way with recommendation and guidelines. You can see here, this is in-flight medical emergencies, a review. You can download this from JAMA, because for different entities you can have such doctor cards that you can download before you get into your next flight and help the patients. And then, again, under the lead of Jochen Hinkelbein, in-flight arrest and in-flight cardiopulmonary resuscitation during commercial air travel, consensus statement and supplementary treatment guideline, the first and single treatment guideline for cardiac arrest and CPR in a plane from the German Society of Aerospace Medicine. It's not it was published in 2017, so about 8 years ago. First international guidelines, 28 recommendations. And I only will show you the strong consensus recommendations. Emergency equipment location as well as major content has to be mentioned in the pre-flight safety announcement. Not only the life vest is important. You probably have seen this airplane that because of birds was not able to further fly and crashed to the Hudson River in New York. And then people were coming out of the airplane and going into a ship. And the very interesting thing for me was not one single person had a life vest, although this was, the plane was landed in water. No one single. So life vest is probably not so very helpful or useful. If you are in the ocean, it's too cold, you may even not survive. But medical equipment should be mentioned at the beginning. Two-person CPR is considered optimum, so if it is very narrow, you can either be between two seats and then resuscitate in a normal position, or you can do it over the head. And two-person, one should be here and one should be over the head, and then you can change. Cabin crew must be trained. That is a requirement, conditio sine qua non in my eyes, initially, and once per year in CPR, and should be retrained in CPR every 6 months. A strong consensus recommendation. The crew should be trained regularly in basic life support, ideally with a focus on CPR in aircraft, because this is a little bit different as here. a strong consensus again, and an AED, or at least the defibrillator, is considered essential and must be available during the flight, because the next AED may be 2 hours away. Strong consensus. What to do to avoid in-flight medical emergencies? I need to look to consult a doctor before the flight. Maybe not you if you are young, but older people should think about that. If ill, do not fly. Walk every 2 hours to avoid thrombosis. Drink a lot, and then you need to walk a lot because you need to go to the toilet. Thrombosis prophylaxis is recommended only if you have severe pre-existing diseases. Reflect time zones and medications. Don't forget your anti-drug. If you're in another time zone, adjust blood glucose levels. You probably have heard about the economy class syndrome, pulmonary embolism. Young ladies taking the pill and smoking and sitting in the window seat without going to the toilet for 12 hours are at high risk of having a thrombosis. Men also, but men usually don't take the pill. So they have increased risk. So, and at the end of my presentation, any questions for you now? I would also focus on what is important for survival following out of hospital cardiac arrest in general. And I have brought with me the most recent ERC guidelines, and I would like to go very briefly with you through system saving lives. It is not a drug, it is not a doctor, it is not a specific machine that is saving lives. We have seen that with Christian Eriksen. It is a system, and it is the early start that is saving lives. That's the most important thing. And we have 5 points with system saving lives. Kids Save Lives is one about it. First is raise awareness about CPR and defibrillation. This is what we are doing. You remember this chain of survival, 3 times more survivors with lay resuscitation. That's the reason why we are doing the World Restart a Heart Day for more than 10 years now. And with the help of the International Red Cross, we are now in 191 countries, so one skipped out last year in Middle America for any reasons. I don't remember, it was Costa Rica or so. So now we only have 191 countries. How many countries do we have in our world? I also had to look it up. I didn't know. We have 193 or 94. No, 94. So only 2 countries were missing here. We trained more than 12 million. We reached more than nearly 600 million people worldwide. So we really have an impact with World Restart a Heart, which is an initiative started in my country and started in Europe. It's every year on October 16, so please join. And we have now a lot of anesthesiologists or future anesthesiologists in this room. Do you know what date 16th of October is? What is it? Yes? The World Anesthesia Day. 1800, please help me, 1842 or 49? There was the first public anesthesia at the Boston, Massachusetts General Hospital, and therefore October 16, since many years, is the World Anesthesia Day, and I was able to make this also the World Restart a Heart Day. The cardiologist, American Heart, was not happy about this, but we were a little bit stronger with this. So next time, system saving lives, use technology to engage communities. So first responder systems. You all can register if you have a first responder system in an app, and then if there is a cardiac arrest outside, the dispatch center knows where you are in here, and they can call you as a first responder in parallel to the emergency medical service system. Do we have first responder systems in Brazil? Think about that. That is really helpful, because first responders in more than 50% arrive before the EMS. And if you don't like to respond, you can switch the app off, but every doctor, every nurse, every paramedic can register. So this is helpful. Implementation. Kids Save Lives for sure is helpful, because if kids know how to do CPR before they come in high puberty, it is like swimming or bicycling. They will never forget. And that's our goal. We want to have kids all over the world. We want to have a legislation, as in Denmark or in China. Kids must be educated in CPR. That will increase survival. And this is in Berlin some years ago. By the way, if we are training kids, always the sun is shining. And this cannot be just by chance. We are supported by the World Health Organization. This is a European map, 6 countries. There is a law on our initiatives, and we have a suggestion in 24 further countries. We start at 4 years. They can check and call. They can check for signs of life and call. We can start in the kindergarten. They cannot compress, but if you tell a 4-year-old how to do compressions, he or she can explain this to an adult. And ventilation is our next, and AED if they are a little bit older. Implementation is rudimentary. Where is this? Which country? Okay, you know. Kids Save Lives Brazil is one of our most active and one of our first international partners in these activities. Ah, yeah. And now I have an audio. This is because I would like to show you that 4-year-old kids can do this. And please enjoy this audio. I hope it works. A 4-year-old boy is calling the dispatch center in London. You can also download this from YouTube.
Hello, please, what is your emergency?
Hello, I'm Roman.
Okay, where's your mummy?
She's at
4
home.
years old.
And where are you?
At home as well.
Can you do me a favour? Can you go and get mummy?
She can't, she said.
You said mummy was there. What do you mean she said?
It means that she's closing her eyes and she's not breathing.
Right, so do you know where you live?
Road 22.
Can you go to your mummy and shake her for me?
She's not waking up.
Give her a good shake. Shout out, mummy.
Mummy! It didn't work.
Are you in Kenley?
Yes, Kenley.
What is your name?
Roman.
This 4-year-old is very adequate and very cool. Adults are not as adequate and cool in such a situation. His mother collapsed, and he used the iPhone of his mother that was blocked by her fingerprint, took the finger of his unconscious mother to unblock the iPhone, and used Siri to call the EMS. 4 years old. And saved his mother's life. We did a scientific review published 1.5 years ago in Circulation, which is something. Leading cardiology journal in the US and also in resuscitation. This was accompanied by a press release by the American Heart with the title "Learning to Save Lives Can Start as Early as Age 4." And this press release appeared in 80 countries all over the world in different newspapers. And so I am a little bit proud of this. Cardiac arrest centers is another thing. If you have a cardiac arrest patient, don't bring her or him to the next hospital, but to a cardiac arrest center. Because cardiac arrest centers are associated with a doubling in survival, because you need to open the occluded coronary artery. In 70% you have occluded coronary artery, so 2 times more survivors. In Germany we are the first country having certified cardiac arrest centers all over the country upon our initiative by the German Resuscitation Council. More than 150 certified centers now, as you can see here. Also in Austria and Switzerland, both German-speaking countries, they start. Implementation in Germany, not bad. In Europe, we are progressing. We use the German activities as a blueprint. Before cardiac arrest center certification and after, you can see a significant improvement in neurological outcome in Germany, at least. Last not least, of the 5 system-saving lives issues is this. So do you remember what this is? If you ask a 4-year-old, he or she will not be able to tell. What does that has to do with resuscitation? Call for help, okay, and what else? You have heard about telephone CPR? Telephone CPR means the layperson is calling the dispatch center, and the dispatch center says to the layperson, we are sending you the EMS, please stay online, put your telephone on a loudspeaker, and we will now explain you how you can increase the survival rate of this patient by 3 times. And then you can explain on the phone cardiac compressions within 1 minute. Everyone can explain this if you don't have any language problems or so. Within 1 minute you can explain a layperson how to do cardiac compressions. And this is telephone CPR. Please think about that. You should implement this in your country. In my country, only 50% of dispatch centers are doing it. Number 2 needed to treat is 7. So a dispatcher needs to do it for 7 times to save 1 life. So with 70, 80 minutes time invest, he or she can save 1 life. This is better than anything that can be done in the emergency medical service or in the hospital. Implementation mixed. Another story. Leon, 10 years old, some years ago in Germany, title page of the newspaper, and Mila, 7 years old. They were with their father, and the father collapsed 43 years old. Leon called the EMS, the dispatch center, and the dispatch center explained Leo how to do CPR, how to do cardiac compressions, and told Leon, send your sister to the door so that the emergency medical service know where to go in. And he did it in an excellent way, and his father survived. He had really cardiac arrest, and Leon resuscitated and saved the life of his father. 10 years old. Happy family, and a lot of presents for the small. And we are just investigating scientifically telephone CPR versus video-instructed dispatcher-assisted cardiopulmonary. I mean, each smartphone can also transfer videos live, so that the dispatcher does not only hear, but also can see whether a layperson is compressing hard and fast enough. This is again associated with a further increase in survival. And what is this? This is the big 5. What you have just seen was the big 5 in resuscitation. And you have not seen any drug. We have published this big 5. So what is most important? Lay resuscitation, telephone CPR, first responder systems, cardiac arrest centers. You can see here most of them are associated with a doubling in survival. Don't forget compression depth, press as hard as you can. Check, call, compress. Don't forget these 3 C's if you are educating lay people. Forget about an AED, I would say. And now we have some time. I would like to show you, I need an introduction for this. So my department is located, our university hospital is located in Cologne in Germany. And in Cologne in Germany, there is also the European Space Agency. And for more than 6-7 years, they have asked us whether we can train the European astronauts that are going to the International Space Station in emergency medicine and CPR. And for sure I said yes. So all European astronauts are coming for 6 days per year and are trained in our skills lab. And then we trained them for many years, and then I said, I need a video from the International Space Station about CPR. And it took me more than 3 years to go through all these administrative things. So if you put something like this into the ISS, this costs a lot of money, and even the astronauts are only allowed to use some very few personal belongings during their trip to the space. But at the end, I was successful, and I would like to show you the product. And I also have then a question for you at the end. CPR in aircrafts. This is the aircraft.
Sudden cardiac arrest is today one of the leading causes of death. In Europe and the US alone, at least 700,000 people die each year following sudden cardiac arrest with unsuccessful out-of-the-hospital cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR. This is 2,000 deaths every day, and the same happens in many other areas of the world. In case of cardiac arrest, the person afflicted needs immediate urgent care that is best done in a hospital or in a specialized center. While it takes usually a bit of time before the person can be transported to one of these centers, anybody can start performing CPR immediately. And since the first few minutes are very critical, this intervention may save a life. So, if you see somebody near you suddenly collapsing and stop breathing, you need to act and start CPR. CPR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, is a fancy word for a relatively simple maneuver designed to maintain oxygen flow to the brain. The first step of CPR is call the emergency services by either asking somebody to call them or do it yourself if you are alone. Second, quickly start chest compressions. This is done by placing both hands, one on top of the other, in the center of the chest, pressing about 5 to 6 centimeters, and then allow for recoil. Let the chest get back to its original position. Compression should be at about 100-120 per minute. Use the rhythm of a fast song if that helps you. Continue performing chest compressions until help arrives. CPR is easy. You do not need to be a nurse or medical doctor to perform it, and you can save a life. Remember, if somebody collapses and stops breathing, call for help and start CPR.
This was an Italian astronaut that was helping us.
Agenzia Spaziale Italiana.
And this was a collaboration. And I have sent the text to him, and he was reading or expressing the words that I sent into the space. And we are using it sometimes for educating school children. And you can download this from YouTube. And what did he not make correct? The compression depth was not correct. It was I was telling him 5 to 6 centimeters. He was also telling it by himself. But as all lay persons, he is not doing it in the right way. And unfortunately, I was not beside him when he took this.
It only takes 2 hands to save a life.
Yeah, that is my last message.
It only takes 2 hands to save a life.
Even in aircrafts. Thank you very much. You probably recognize some people. Yes. Maria is there, and also Naomi here. You can see Maria, you can see Naomi, and this guy?
The daughter is, she's the daughter. And here, Naomi, Carlos Gallardo, and the daughter, the Carlos Gallardo's daughter. And the school children.
It only takes 2 hands to save a life.
any questions? By the way, you can also do CPR with your feet, also in airplanes. You can do it. I mean, and you don't need to do it with your hands. So in Germany and in Europe and maybe also in Brazil, as I heard, and if we are training school children in CPR, they all get a homework from us. And I also have a homework for you. And the homework is, you know how to do CPR, and you know CCC. What is CCC? Check, call, compress. Please go home or to your friends, and within the next 2 weeks, tell 10 people what is check, call, compress, and how they can save a life with their 2 hands. That is your homework, if you agree. And speak about Kids Save Lives and how easy it is to save a life, and how much more important this is than any drug or any other intervention. And it is about the 3rd leading cause of death in our world. And it is, I mean, there's nothing more touching as if a patient can survive because of your intervention. I remember some months ago, we, from the German Red Cross, we educated school children in a school in Germany with their teachers, and a few weeks later, a 43-year-old female teacher collapsed and had a cardiac arrest, and the school children resuscitated her, and she survived. Is there something greater in professional life? Homework, please. Thank you.
Some question to Professor Böttiger? So, this is the opportunity to ask him some.
Yes, there's one question. I also have another story if you, from my in-flight medical emergency. Yes, please. Would you like to have the microphone? Can you give it?
Thank you. Firstly, I'll say a story that happened with a doctor, a famous regional doctor in my city. I'm from the northeast of Brazil, and there was a doctor. He was going to the Maldives for his honeymoon, and he was 40 years old or something. He was very young, and he had a cardiac arrest while he was crossing the Atlantic. In the plane. And he had a heart attack. So what can we do to treat a patient from a heart attack with few equipment to assist someone? Is there anything we can do to increase the likelihood of his survival?
I mean, we are all doctors. You are also an anesthesiologist or a resident? First year resident. So we all know what to do, how to save a life, and it depends on the equipment that is on board. And if you have a defibrillator, it's more easy. If you have drugs and if you are being able to manage the airway, it's more or less easy. If you don't have it, and in Germany we only have 30%, maybe you also only have 30%, then you have a problem. But if you are ventilating, and after more than 10-15 minutes you also need to ventilate. Lay people do not need to ventilate, but as a doctor, as a resident, you also should ventilate, and you are able to ventilate. So if you're doing cardiac compressions and ventilate, the patient can survive for hours. Or it can at least not die. The brain will survive if you do cardiac compressions and ventilations until the next airport. And maybe in such a case, and if the next airport is too far away, you need to ask for emergency landing. That's the only chance the patient has. But with cardiac compressions and ventilation, the brain can survive for hours if you're doing it adequately. Press hard and ventilate adequately. That would be my answer to your question. Okay. Should I tell you the final story, or is it too late? It's a funny story, it's not really medicine. Yes, please? Is there an orthopedic surgeon among us? Okay, so I was once in holidays in Crete, this is in Greece, and I was flying back, and in the middle of the flight to Frankfurt, there was the question, is there a doctor on board? And I was looking around, and I hope that there is a doctor on board, but and I was really a little bit shy. And 1 minute later, the question was, is there at least medical personnel on board? And then I thought, okay, I will look what's happening, and maybe they need my help. And then I was going to the back, should please go to the back. There was no one. There was no stewardess, there was no patient. And then the stewardess was coming, and she said, are you a medical person? I said, yes, I'm a doctor. What's the problem? The young boy, the young person, 25 years old, in the front row, he has some problems. Okay, how can I help? And then he already came, the young boy. And I said, how can I help you? You are looking great. And then he said, well, he's drug addictive, and he is on intravenous drugs, or on oral drugs, and he has no oral drugs anymore, and he now needs some intravenous drugs, and he needs a doctor to give him these intravenous drugs. And then I said, okay, in my eyes you are in good conditions. You can in Frankfurt go to the hospital and ask for this, but I will not inject you any drugs. And then he said, is that your last word? And I said, yes. And if you're getting in worse conditions, come back, I will try to help you. And then he began shouting, there is a doctor and he's not helping me. I mean, sometimes these people are very, very special. And then I was able to escape and go back to my seat. And he came several times back to me and was shouting at me, why are you not helping me? I need your help and you are not helping me. And this was a very unpleasant situation because all the others did not know what's really going on. And in Frankfurt, I was so happy that I was out of this plane, and I took my wife and we ran to the baggage claim. And then I heard another people running, and he was behind us. And I thought, I hope this is not this guy. But then this guy came and said, are you really a doctor? And then I said, yes. And then he asked me, where are you working? And I said, that's my private thing. You don't need to know where I'm working. I have just tell you if you have a problem, go to the hospital here in the airport in Frankfurt, there's a hospital. Are you really a doctor? I said, yes. And I said, why are you asking? And then he said, oh, I thought you're probably an orthopedic surgeon. That is a true story, and I also told this story to our orthopedic surgeon, and I said to him, you need to work a little bit on your appearance in public.
Thank you, Professor Böttiger. Thank you all for the audience. Okay.
Thank you all for like this, you're pushing yourself,